are back. We are back in August for episode number 28 of the Shutdown Inning Podcast. I am Steven Rissotto, alongside, as always, Tylor Hall. Tylor, what's going on? How we doing?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me. No, it's good to be back recording with you again, my friend. It's been a little bit, but yeah, I mean, we've got the stretch run ahead of us. We're officially in the dog days of summer, I believe.
And if people haven't already, they are now scoreboard watching. Scoreboard watching is alive and well at this point in the year, especially in the National League when the wild card situation is going to get a little filled up. There's some races in the American League too that could be something to look out for, but I always view this time of year as something that we're paying close attention to in terms of postseason.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you always have, this time it is safe to look at the standings, see who's where and how each of those teams are performing each night. And so I've got about, as a Giants fan, I've got about 4 or 5 teams that I'm checking almost every night to see how they're doing and going from there. And so, it's really kind of the every game matters now. Every game matters all year, but now you're looking at like every game on the schedule and how every team's doing. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we're gonna have a lot of fun on the Shutdown Inning Podcast. And there is one thing that we want to tease. So some of you guys may know we talked about it possibly for a little bit in prior episodes, but Tylor and I attended the Savannah Bananas game in Sacramento. So we're gonna tell kind of our story in future episodes. So follow us on every platform to keep up with that. But for now, we're gonna catch up on some baseball news that we missed.
Yeah, but Banana Ball deserves its own
Absolutely.
episode.
Yeah.
We have a few surprises in store for that we are waiting to finalize. So that's why we're not doing it yet, but it's in the pipeline, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. We had a great time, and thank you again to Snot Rocket 40. We'll keep the identity as is, but thank you very much for having us. And that episode will be soon, so keep an eye out and an ear open for that.
And Snot Rocket's listening. We know he is. He always does.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So thank you again. We had a blast. And more to come on Banana Ball.
Yes.
But yeah, a lot's happened since we last recorded, man. The trade deadline. We had seen a couple trades happen last time we recorded. That's obviously passed about a week and a half ago now. Kind of a quiet deadline compared to others historically, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it was quiet. And I think it was not just quiet because of the, not necessarily the moves that were or weren't made, but just because of the quality on the market. I thought the quality was pretty subpar. Like, there was talent that was moved that, a lot of teams feel that they could have done without. And the market was definitely a seller's market, especially with starting pitching. Some of the prices that teams had to pay to get pitching in their organizations at the deadline were crazy. And there's been, there are teams that just didn't want any part in it. So it was there wasn't that big name. Ohtani kind of changed the market, I think, just a little bit. But there's a few big names from one team. I don't know if we want to jump into what the Mets did.
Yeah, we might as well. Let's burn it down, just like Cohen did.
Yeah, and we talked about like how they wouldn't do that. I think we talked about how Cohen came out and said that everything's fine. We've mentioned it a few times in prior episodes, but he said everything's fine. And now all of a sudden the Mets, who built this gigantic juggernaut, or what looked to be a juggernaut in the offseason, they won the offseason, and then there they are here in the August, and they're not doing well. They sold off 2 of their top starting pitchers. Justin Verlander goes to Houston, and Max Scherzer before that went to Texas. So, I mean, what do you make of that? Because that,
Yeah.
kind of surprising that the Mets are saying, you know what, we're going to punt.
Yeah, they were even listening on Alonso. I guess their asking price was super high because they have one more year of control with him. But we've talked about it. I'm kind of glad that they've sold off finally, because now this can kind of put the Mets to bed for a while, it sounds like. But it is surprising, but I'm not surprised that the 2 teams in Texas came calling, because they are battling each other in the AL West. They both needed some arms. And so at least, one thing I will say is from what I've read, the Mets at least did a good job kind of on their returns that they got for those guys. So, hopefully that'll help them down the line. But definitely surprised that, everyone was talking about the Mets. Look at this offseason. They're huge. And now they were probably the biggest seller at the deadline, I think you could say.
I didn't think their roster was like, needing a big overturn like this. Like, I mean, yeah, they were underplaying, but I also thought that they were a team that could be an easy bounce back candidate for 2024. And apparently, no, Verlander, could have been that guy if they didn't trade him. I know Scherzer, when Scherzer was dealt, I didn't think that they would trade Verlander at all. I thought that they would want some stability, at least in their rotation. They basically ended up paying the Astros to take on Verlander's contract, but just a complete mess. I mean, you cannot tease your fan base like that, with a great offseason and then follow it up with just a fire sale at the deadline. Marcano went too. I mean, just a total mess in Queens. And I don't know if you know Frank the Tank from Barstool, but he's like going off every night about the Mets. But I did hear some good things about their return on some of the prospects that they get, but not ideal to trade those guys. But yeah, one thing that I did want to say is that we mentioned how the market was a little rough, unless or the market was a little quiet, unless you're in the American League West. Like it's action in that division.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the surprising part too is, like you said, they were a bounce back candidate. I'm not sure if Canna was, but I know Verlander and Scherzer both have a couple more years on those deals. So it's not like they were gonna, I think they're the only two major pieces that got traded at the deadline that aren't rentals.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just kind of, maybe they just figured we can get something for them. Long term, they are kind of a risk with their age. But yeah, like you said, the West, it was, well, the Mariners are going to Mariner. They're going to trade with anybody at any time. They're probably still working the trades right now, even though the deadline's passed, just because they just love to deal. But yeah, the Angels, the Astros, and the Rangers, they're all going for it, whether they should or not. I think two of those teams should. But yeah, I mean, you got the Angels. They went and got Grichuk and Cron from the Rockies after getting Giolito, as we discussed in the previous episode. So they're trying to show Ohtani that they're in it to win it. And up until a couple nights ago, they hadn't even won a game after the deadline. But yeah, I mean, crazy times in the AL West.
Yeah, just insane. And speaking of the AL West, we'll stay there for Jordan Montgomery, also going to Texas. He was the lefty from the St. Louis Cardinals, and we mentioned how the Cardinals had pieces to trade off, and they certainly did trade at least one of the. I think he was the only guy that really moved from that group, if I'm not mistaken. I'm a little
Yeah,
surprised that they didn't do
him and
more.
DeYoung,
Yeah,
him
and
and
Flaherty.
DeYoung, and Flaherty.
Went to Baltimore. DeYoung went to Toronto
Yeah,
to replace the injured Bo Bichette, but they did not end up trading the Brendan Donovan, Tommy Edman types. Jordan
or
Hicks.
Arenado stayed.
Yeah, did Jordan Hicks? Jordan Hicks went somewhere, didn't he?
Hicks moved. I believe Hicks went to Toronto as well.
Yeah, so that's a good move for them. Um, he's a flamethrower. He's coming off of an injury. Um, he did go to Toronto, and I think the Blue Jays, that's a legitimate bullpen upgrade. But they did not, and I don't even think they were close to, because there's rumors about Arenado and Goldschmidt. I don't think it was ever going to get to that point, but they're on track for their like first losing season in like what 15 years, 20 years, which is absurd to me.
It's been a long time. I don't think you were alive the last time the Cardinals had a losing season.
Maybe
you definitely
not.
weren't a baseball fan at the time.
Yeah, no doubt. Um, Candelario went to the Cubs. The Cubs are climbing a little bit. They had a good week. They're playing better as of late. He was looked at as kind of like the prized possession of the deadline, which was a good indication on how the talent was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Cubs kind of got hot right before the deadline. I mean, I think when we recorded, 3.5, 4 days before the deadline, we were talking about, are they going to move Stroman? Are they going to move Bellinger? Where are they going to go? And then they flipped. They had a hot week. It went from seller to buyer, and they ended up getting Candelario, who, like you said, was probably one of the best bats, if not the best bat available, or at least that got moved. So, Cubs are kind of one of those teams on the like, should they or shouldn't they? And they gave up quite a bit to get Candelario, if I recall. But hey, they're going for it in Wrigleyville. So, they always they have a fan base who deserves it. They always support their Cubbies, and the bleachers will be full for some more beer snakes as they make their push.
Yeah, no doubt. Um, you and I were doing during the trade deadline, we were doing the Giants Chatter trade deadline special show. And when we were doing that, the news came up that Eduardo Rodriguez of the Detroit Tigers, a left-handed pitcher, had been traded to the Dodgers, but he axed the trade. He had a no trade clause. The Dodgers were on the list, and he declined the trade. And it later came out that he had family reasons, personal reasons, and obviously sometimes guys just don't want to pick up their family and move, especially when they've been through stuff like Rodriguez had. But I think that's one of the few times we'll ever see anybody decline the Dodgers in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a crazy few minutes because, like you said, we were live on air with the Giants Chatter guy. So shout out to our crew over at Giants Chatter, and we thought, okay, he's going to the Dodgers, and then he declined it, and it was kind of like a mini celebration. You don't see, especially, I mean, man, you'd be going from one of the bottom teams in baseball to you'd be going from the outhouse to the penthouse, and props to Rodriguez for declining the Dodgers and kind of putting his family first. It sounds like he loves Detroit. Uh, he's had a good experience there. I know they did kind of support him when he had his leave of absence. I believe it was last season. So, and also, whether he ever plays the orange and black or not, I know a lot of people were joking around like Eduardo Rodriguez, forever Giant, for turning down the Dodgers. And we'll see. I mean, I think he has forget if his deal is a mutual option or a player option for 24 and 20. I think he has options for 24 and 25. But if he ends up becoming a free agent, he can kind of decide where he goes now instead of being forced to move a few thousand miles away in the middle of the season.
Yeah, and there was Dodger fans, of course. There were, I think any fan base would do this to some extent, but the Dodger fans were kind of mean to him in his Instagram comments and telling him that, pretty bad stuff. But I think it's a good example of players that, identify themselves as not property. I don't know if that makes sense, but because we always forget that, players are humans too. And despite the Tigers maybe not being the best team in baseball, who knows what his situation is there, right? He might have a great apartment and he lives in a great area in Detroit. He likes the training staff. He likes the coaching staff. He likes his teammates, and everybody wants to win a championship. But I feel like the priority for every big leaguer and every athlete should always be to be happy, right? And if this guy's happy, who's going to argue that, right? Maybe he doesn't want to change the scenery. So I think it's different for everybody. And it's a good example for, him using his leverage to stay happy. So good for him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the big thing for him was more family. Like you said, everyone, these players are people, but there's also a lot more people involved, especially when they have families. And, not a lot of jobs. You come home and then you're like, hey, guess what? We live 2,000 miles away now. Pack what you want to have for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen in most professions. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're happy where you are, your family's happy, more power to you for doing what makes you happy. So, but yeah, I mean, I think, especially with how far past the deadline we are, we can kind of tie a bow on the trade deadline. But one of the interesting things that came out after the deadline, when Scherzer was already in Texas, he said that basically him and Steve Cohen had a little get together when they were talking about trading him. And Steve Cohen told him that now the Mets' plan is to not even really compete until, was it 25 or 26? And it was kind of surprising to see how open. I'm sure Cohen didn't appreciate it, but it's pretty surprising to kind of have a team's plan kind of thrown out so openly. Were you surprised to see that kind of Scherzer kind of drop that knowledge to the media?
Absolutely. I'm 100% shocked that this was even said to the guy. And organizations think like this all the time. Like it wouldn't shock me that teams have internal discussions about where they might be in 5 weeks or 5 years, I should say. So that part doesn't doesn't surprise me that Billy Epler and Steve Cohen are thinking on this trajectory. But what does surprise me is that they would go and tell one of their veteran players this information, and not just any veteran player, a guy like Max Scherzer, who is a leader in every clubhouse he steps in, and is not just a leader in every clubhouse he steps in. He's the Players Association, like he's on the top board for the Players Association among active players. So this is fuel for him to bring to like future negotiations or whatnot. I don't know how long he's going to be in the league, probably not that long. But this is a great example for Max Scherzer to go out and say, look, this is what the owners are doing. So, I mean, it gave him ammo. It gave him 100% ammo. But from a non-players association and bargaining standpoint, you should never, ever tell your players or personnel that your window to win is not right that second, right? Even if you're like, far off and you have a roster that you're rebuilding and you're like the early 2010 Houston Astros where there's just no hope. There's a ton of non-big league players on the team. Even when you have a roster like that, I feel like the emphasis should always be to win tonight, right? Win today. And when you're talking about, 2-3 years down the road and you're telling a veteran player this who came to the Mets to win, I feel like there's a major issue. Like you can't just, and plus, like in Scherzer's defense, the Mets had an offseason, we just said it, for the ages. And he's gone through a few different feelings here from, we have a stacked team, we spent so much money, this is awesome, to I'm being traded, they don't want to win in a matter of months. So, I mean, good for Max Scherzer to speak out on this. I feel like the public needs to know, especially Mets fans need to know what is going on behind the scenes. And of course, the Mets are probably going to deny this. But if you're going to open your trap, why are you opening your trap to Max Scherzer? This guy's got his hand in every cookie jar out there when it comes to, bargaining and owners and players association stuff. So I thought it was a big mistake.
Yeah, it was puzzling for a number of reasons. Most of them you touched on, but also like, I don't know, did he have a no trade and they were just trying to convince him like, hey, we're not going to be trying to win for a couple of years, so you might want to take this deal kind of thing. But just that you would, be that open with a player that you're actively trying to, or like, why would you want that information out of your organization? In most organizations, what kind of direction they are, what phase and being competitive they are. But when you have a team that's the Mets, one of the, the biggest market in the baseball world, they have an owner who's willing to throw money around. You don't expect to hear that they are planning on not necessarily being competitive for another couple of years again now. So what a 2023 it's been for the Mets. I think this has to be one of the more puzzling and disappointing years for a team in a long time.
Yeah, and if I'm Scherzer, I'm beyond shocked. Like I'm beyond shocked that I'm being told that the window is that far away after watching what they did this offseason. Beyond shocked. Because again, I don't think that this is a complete rebuild situation. And it still may not be, right? I think 20 if they're planning on competing in 2025, 2026, it's not like a 6-year rebuild. They're going to be back pretty soon. And they have the resources to be back pretty soon. So we'll have to see with the Mets. Very interesting situation. And from one situation to a new one, there are teams that are kind of faltering a little bit post-trade deadline. The Arizona Diamondbacks were once the really good story of the National League West, kind of coming out of nowhere, flipping the script with their kind of new style of play, very athletic club. And they have not done very well as of late since the trade deadline, and they did not get that top starting pitcher that I think that they were after. And here they are. They are now sitting in the National League West with a record below 500. So it was a quick decline for Arizona. They're 11 games out of first place after holding it for just a little bit. The Dodgers were back in first place at 67-46 at the time of this recording. Arizona in the wild card, they're back 2.5 games in that too. So kind of a quick drop off for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a bummer because they, like you said, they kind of came out of nowhere. And I think even on our preview show, you had them as kind of like a dark horse. And, there's still about 50 games left. It's not like it's over, but, I think their biggest acquisitions at the deadline were Tommy Pham and Andrew Chafin, I think. So, Probably didn't get the reinforcements they had hoped for. But I mean, they've been playing great ball. They've got a lot, a great young core there, and yeah, they've just kind of fallen off. I think they're 1-9 in their last 10, so they've struggled, lost 8 in a row even. So they have struggled mightily since the deadline. Basically, right when the deadline hit, so did their good fortunes, it seems. And so we'll see. The division's basically out of hand for them. I don't see them catching up there. But they still are 2.5 out of the wild card, like you said, so they could still sneak in. They got those young guys who can hopefully develop a short-term memory so they don't get too down on themselves and bounce back. But ouch.
Ouch. And ouch to the Los Angeles Angels, who a kind of different situation in that they weren't leading at all this year in their division, but they kind of had that shot. They were trying to take that shot with, saying, hey, we're not going to trade Ohtani. And they were like 0-7 or 0-8 coming off the trade deadline, and now they're just not in a good spot at all. They're way back in the division. They're back 10 games, 10 and a half games, and 7 games in the wild card. And this stretch that they just had, in my mind, I mean, it puts the nail in the coffin for them.
Yeah, they're sitting exactly at 500 as we record today, 58-58. 6.5 out of the wild card. But the thing is, like, for me, you got to look at how many teams do you have to hop as well. And they would need, they have to hop 4 teams to get into the playoffs now. They're not close to quite a couple of those. So they would have to have a lot of teams falter and for them to start playing really good ball again, which they've only had like a couple stretches of really solid baseball this year. So, yeah, I mean, I know we could probably do a whole episode on what the Angels should have done a couple weeks ago, but this is the exact situation of why I would have done the exact opposite of what they did, because now they're probably going to lose Ohtani and have gutted their farm to try to show him that they could win, and they'll have no farm and no Ohtani, I feel like, by the turn of the calendar this year.
Yeah, no doubt. Just a strange situation in Anaheim. And, I didn't fault them for trying for it, but I think I see what you're saying now. I think I always saw what you're saying, but now it's kind of coming to light with what's going on there.
Yeah.
And moving gears here, there's a really disturbing story coming out of Baltimore just a few days ago, where their lead play-by-play announcer, he's a young broadcaster by the name of Kevin Brown, and he was reportedly suspended. Awful Announcing came out with a report that he was suspended, and then the reason came out that he was suspended for talking about the Orioles' rough record in terms of winning series at Tropicana Field over the last 5 years, I think it was. And this was just mind-blowing that this happened. I mean, we could maybe, play the video. I could insert it in, and we could play that. So just go ahead and listen to this. This is what he said.
For the Orioles, Brandon Hyde has felt like this has been maybe the toughest ballpark to play in, but the Orioles have a chance to do something special today. They've already clinched at least a split in the series, winning 2 of the first 3, and they could pick up a series win behind Tyler Wells today. It's been a minute. The Orioles split a 2-gamer with the Rays in June. They had lost their last 15 series here at Tropicana Field. You have to go back to when our now colleague Brad Brock picked up the win in the series finale, June 25th, 2017, the last time the Orioles won a series here at St. Pete. Already got 3-2 at the Trop this year after winning 3 of 18 the previous 3 years combined. It is a stark difference, Ben, and it is not a bad Rays team. It's not like all of a sudden the Rays became slouches in the American League East. They've led this division every day, but now 2, and the Orioles once again are back alone in first place.
Yeah. Okay, Tyler. I mean, this is probably one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to unpack here, just how this could even lead to any discipline, let alone a suspension. But I mean, a couple things. He didn't even give any opinions. He stated only facts that were made graphic. There's graphics on the screen if you're watching or if you've seen the clip. So that means there was producers involved. People were aware that this was going to go on air, but it's not even like it was bad. It was 100% factual. He even put a spin on it that, but they're starting to turn the corner and play a little better against them. And the guy gets suspended. I mean, it's been crazy. I mean, there's been basically every other broadcast team has touched on it on air, saying that it's ridiculous that this has happened. And I have a buddy who's an Orioles fan, and he was just like, what a bunch of idiots. It's a bad look for the Orioles, for a team that's so young and that you could be so excited about, that this has kind of become a major storyline of their season.
What an absolute joke. I can't believe that I agree with you 100%. First of all, he said nothing. I had to watch it, Tyler. I had to watch it 5 times to figure out what the hell he said, because I couldn't figure it out. I had to watch it 5 times. And then after 5 times of watching it, I had to go read the article for extra context because I couldn't figure it out. And then after doing that, I figured it out, and I was like, that's what he was suspended for? Just saying that they've been horrible at Tropicana? Like, what do you want him to say? And first of all, the idea that this is just him that was a part of it is horrendous. There's an entire broadcast crew that is in charge of putting up graphics. And this graphic was pre-planned before the broadcast. They put it up, and he delivered, he relayed the message, what was on the graphic. They were like, 0-17 in series since 2017, which is pathetically bad. And you're right, he did put the spin on it that, hey, this is a new Orioles team with new talent, a lot of young guys, and things are turning in the right direction. And it turns out the Orioles have a reputation of doing this garbage. And they have a new policy where, like, their broadcasters have to wear team polos and, stuff embedded with the logo. Like, it's a total joke. It makes him look soft. It makes him look horrible. He did nothing. They've done this with John Miller in the past, about 25 years ago. Just a total joke. I'm embarrassed. I feel bad that Kevin Brown is embarrassed. He's got to live with this for at least the immediate future. Everywhere he goes, people are going to try and bring it up to him. It's a mess. And the Orioles, who are owned by the Angelos family that have owned the team for a while, it's not a good look. It's not a good look, and it's taking away from the great baseball that they've been playing.
Yeah, I mean, good luck to them getting any high caliber broadcasters to join their broadcast team moving forward now, after how they've treated their team this year. And, definitely the Streisand effect, man. Like, I wouldn't have known that they were playing so crappy against the Rays for the last 4 or 5 years if they hadn't gone and suspended Kevin Brown over it. But now, guess what? The whole baseball world knows. So that now they know that you're terrible at managing your ball club, at least from a publicity side. And they know how terrible you played at Tropicana Field now, where before, if you just been like, hey man, like, I would see that's what's weird. Like, even saying, well, hey man, don't do that in the field. He didn't do anything wrong. So that's why I'm just kind of like, I don't even know why this is an issue. Like, so they should have just been like, yeah, we are a new Orioles team. We're going to win the series. We're going to win a series in Tropicana this year and go from there. Just so many questions here for what the Orioles were thinking. And there's no valid, sane reason for why they made this an issue.
And I'm willing to bet that somebody went up to him and brought this to his attention, and he had no idea what they were talking about. Like, hey, we got to talk about what you said the other night. What did I say the other night? Right? Like, and that probably wasn't the first, second, third, or fourth thing that was even on his radar when somebody were to come up. And it's one thing to tell a guy like, hey, let's not talk about the record. But it's another thing to say, we're going to suspend you. We're going to take you off the air, embarrass you, embarrass your family, and suspend you. Like, what is going? And this was in the team notes. Yeah. The team itself, the team's public relation department, gave this information to the media before the game. And apparently it's...
Yeah, and this isn't just like team notes, just for those who don't know. Like, everyone in the press box gets it. Both broadcast teams get it. Like, if you're there to cover baseball professionally, you get these notes that the Orioles put out there.
Yes. It's Peter Angelos, John Angelos. If you're out there, if you're listening, if you have nothing better to do, so you're listening to the Shutdown Inning on, this great day, Go in the booth, broadcast yourself. If you have such a problem with your broadcasters telling the truth, go in there and put your own spin on it. Go in there, tell the world that the Orioles are the best team since the 98 Yankees. Lie out of your ass. Do it. Go ahead. You do it yourself. If you don't like the way this guy, who's, by the way, Kevin Brown's a very good broadcaster. I was unfamiliar with him, but I did some research when this thing happened. And that's going to be the silver lining out of this, is that people now know who Kevin Brown is. I think he is going to get more opportunities from this. And I can't wait to hear him in the future. And we're going to see him in plenty of big games because the Orioles are good, which is what he was trying to say. But man, it's stupid. I can't believe it.
I don't think, is he even back on the air yet? Have they brought him back?
Well, that's a good thing, because you mentioned something really important about how all the broadcasters were commenting on this. Everybody brought it up, right? Like Gary Cohen brought it up. Chip Carey with the Cardinals broadcast threw kind of a jab out there. Dwayne Kuiper talked about it on the Giants morning show on KNBR. People have talked about this, and they even started chanting at Camden Yards, free Kevin Brown. And we see this with the A's. Teams are starting to realize that ownership, you could take jabs at them, right? And nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen to you if you do it in a way that's organized and meaningful. And shout out to the Orioles fans for sticking up for Kevin Brown, because I would have been there chanting with them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I mean, from one kind of fight to another, we got, one of the more brawls in the last at least couple decades happened between, usually you say the teams because brawls usually get, more involved, but you can call it the Guardians White Sox brawl, but this was the Tim Anderson Jose Ramirez brawl, to be quite honest. I don't think anyone else even really got that involved, but do you recall anything quite like this?
This was a good one. And the first thing that I thought of was the Jose Bautista punch. Like, it's got some company now. It's got company, because this was a good one. And it happened kind of like, we've seen Tim Anderson get hot before on the field. We've seen him get upset. We've seen people get upset at him, but we have never seen him kind of go over the edge like this. And Jose Ramirez, like, who saw that coming? Like, Jose Ramirez, like, apparently he's like the nicest guy in Cleveland, and he throws a right jab at Tim Anderson. First of all, if you're going to start a fight and you're going to drop the glove and you're going to square up, you cannot under any circumstances end up on the ground after getting nearly knocked out.
Yeah, for sure. That's got to be embarrassing for Tim Anderson. I've never seen a guy really literally drop the glove, like take the boxing stance, and then I've never even seen that, but let alone then him get clocked in the chin and go down. And it's a little bit different too from the Bautista one, because everyone, the Bautista one, like Odor just got kind of a quick punch in, kind of unexpected, where, I think Bautista was looking to push Odor away. Ramirez and Anderson were like, they were set up like they knew what was about to go down. And I'll even throw out, I noticed this, like Anderson kind of waited until the pitcher was almost right behind Ramirez. I think he thought he was going to like grab him. He was going to get a free punch in, but he didn't grab a hold of Ramirez like he planned. Ramirez got loose and then, gave him a nice little seat. It was one for the ages.
It was one for the ages, and Anderson couldn't walk off the field. Like, he was stumbling, out like it. He got clocked, and he was really feeling it after.
And he got the biggest suspension, as he should, because he definitely escalated it. He started the fight, and Ramirez ended it.
You cannot drop the glove. Like, you can't just, get in a position like that where you want to fight a guy and get clocked the way Tim Anderson got clocked. Like, and I didn't think that the punch, like, I thought it grazed Tim Anderson at first from Ramirez, but, looking at the side angle and this type of thing, like, really does justice. It got him square. And the fact that he had trouble walking off the field, I don't know what caused the whole thing. There's been kind of talk about the hard tags that Anderson has been putting on, and Ramirez talked about how he's kind of, that the league is sick of him. I'm not quoting him there, but he said something along those lines, that the league is sick of him. But I mean, yeah, Anderson should have got the bigger suspension. He ended up looking like a fool. Jose Ramirez, shout out to you because you have an unbelievable right hook. That was pretty impressive. And Terry Francona, who was
And I
ejected.
believe it was the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go for it.
Terry Francona, who was ejected, came back onto the field, which, I mean, that's going to be a nice, hefty fine.
Yeah, I'm sure he got fined pretty big for it, but I was surprised he only got one game for that. Both managers both got a game, I believe. I was surprised that since he was ejected already, that's all he got. But also, if you have a chance to go listen to I think it was the Guardians radio broadcast,
Tom
but
Hamilton.
his call, yeah, like down goes Anderson, down goes Anderson. That was a great call, and I think fighting in general is silly. Professional athletes fighting is silly. But if I have to see a fight on a baseball field, I'd much rather see that kind of like one-on-one, like, okay, like if you guys are really that upset at each other, go for it. Instead of just like a bunch of mob, like everyone just kind of pushing each other around. Get your licks in if you want, break it up, and then and like I said, those were the only two guys really suspended. I think Emmanuel Clase, I always butcher pronunciations. He got suspended as well, and I think those are the only players. And usually you see a lot more activity on the peripherals when those things are happening, and they were just like, no, let's get out of here. Let those two guys go at it and move on. And so, all in all, I mean, it had everything you could want for Steven. No careers ended like the Harper Strickland. So
yeah, Michael Morris's career was pretty much done anyways. It was just the cherry on top. But this one was a good one. And Tim Anderson started talking smack on Twitter, and I like Tim Anderson. I really do. I think that he's a good guy in the clubhouse to have, and the amount of work that he's done in the community is very cool, and he's good for the game. I like his bat flips. I like his energy. But this was a misstep. This was a total misstep. He went online afterwards and was tweeting, and it was not good. He was kind of losing control of the situation, which should have ended, when everybody cleared the field. But I like baseball fights. I think they're fun, they're entertaining, and it gets the sport talked about. Baseball's not on the Sports Center ever, right? We're getting baseball in the spotlight, maybe not for the best reason, but bad publicity. Tyler.
Bad publicity.
Bad publicity is publicity. There we go. Sorry.
There we go.
I can't say
Teamwork makes the dream work, buddy. But yeah, I mean, like you said, a lot of people were talking about it. It was trending for like days after the fight happened. So, like I said, it's silly, but at least this one was entertaining. To wrap it up before we get to 3 up, 3 down, which I'm sure everybody has missed. We had a couple pieces of history, but since the last time we recorded, we had 2 no-hitters. Framber Valdez for the Astros, and then last night, Michael Lorenzen for the Phillies. Already showing that the Phillies made a great deal at the deadline there. So, I mean, as a former pitcher, Steven, and just a baseball fan, and I think we talked about on a previous. Forget if we talked about it on an episode, but I know you and I had talked about how crazy it was that we hadn't seen any no hitters. And then, in the last just over month with the perfect game in Oakland, and then these two, we're getting the string back.
Yeah, getting the string back. I remember a few years ago, there's just like so many of them before July, and it was just almost like somebody was hacking the system. But the good thing about this, and Framber threw it on the day of the deadline, and Lorenzen threw one last night, like you mentioned. The good thing about this, and you could agree with me, they were not combined no hitters, Tyler. They were
yeah.
the guy. They were one guy. There's the starting pitcher going all the way, and you and I both appreciate a nice complete game, let alone a no hitter. And it's a really cool accomplishment. And those two guys, are kind of different on different wavelengths. Valdez is the type of guy who is kind of an ace, right? In Cy Young contention every year. And Lorenzen's a guy that just got traded to be a mid-rotation guy for the Phillies. And I would like to know what the shortest amount of time is for a guy to throw a no-hitter with a new team, which, could be it might have been a stat that's been uncovered, but I believe it was his first home start in the new uniform.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that was his family was there. His mom was there. His wife were there. They were like, I don't know if you saw the video of them kind of like, one more pitch, one more pitch. They were mouthing it. And Lorenzen had, Lorenzen is kind of known for having like a heroic moment earlier in his career when his dad passed away. And then when he came back off the bereavement list, he had a go-ahead home run because Lorenzen, obviously a very good hitting pitcher, someone who could probably hold his own and, as a two-way guy. And, he got emotional after that. And the broadcast last night asked about what his dad would think. So really cool moment. And definitely something to remember for both those guys. And cool moment for the baseball world too.
Yeah, for sure. I've always kind of liked Lorenzen because he'll always do like I think his cleats last night were Vans with like metal spikes on them, pretty much. I'm always a sucker for the family reaction shots, and that was actually the second one in that game last night. Because also, just kind of a little side note, Weston Wilson, a rookie for the Phillies, I think it was his first at bat. I think he played in the minors for like 7 years. First at bat, hits a home run, and his dad started crying in the stands. I don't know if you saw that one, Steven, but that was the same game. So a lot of happy tears at Citizens Bank last night. But as far as you watch a lot more ball than I do. You cover the Giants. Do you think any part of like why there has been such a gap until we got a no-hitter this year was pitchers kind of getting used to the pitch clock?
It could be, but I also think that the pitch clock might actually benefit the possibility of no-hitters. And what I mean by that is like you have tempo, right? And tempo and pace is really important when it comes to pitching. And I think getting used to that maybe had a part in it, but I think once pitchers are used to the pitch clock, it's going to work in their favor. And I think we're seeing that already. It's not just something that's going to make the games go quicker. It's going to legitimately affect people's performances. And it's going to benefit guys, especially that were doing that before. And I'm not sure about Lorenzen or Valdez and their quickness before the pitch clock. But when you have a game like this where you're in such control and you have such good tempo on the mound, then you're inclined to do that pretty much every start. And, I'm sure their next start, they're going to jump back right to where they left off. But it could be that, but I also think that it's a big time advantage for pitchers to have that pitch clock once they get used to it. And the key word is once they get used to it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think long run, once it's kind of fully established in the game, it'll be a pitcher's advantage because guys won't have as much time to batters in the batter's box aren't going to have as much time to consider what the next pitch may be or how should they attack an at bat. And
one other thing real quick is like, guys with the pitch clock that I didn't even think of just now, but guys with the pitch clock, like if they're pitching into the 8th inning with the pitch clock and they're not used to it, that's a pretty big accomplishment. Because when you have like 80 or 90 pitches on the pitch clock, like that's way more tiring than 80 or 90 pitches without the pitch clock. So in some regards, it might even be a bigger accomplishment than some of the no-hitters we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's, I feel like we are seeing a lot of guys in general go a little deeper now too. I think they're kind of finding their groove with the pitch clock. And hey, 2 no-hitters in about a week and a half. That's also really good for baseball. The fights can be good for baseball, but the no-hitters are always good for baseball. So so that's kind of the recap. But the recap everyone's been looking for: 3 up, 3 down. It's been a few episodes since we got to do this. We had our Drew Dowd on, if you missed that episode, 8th round pick with the Rays. We didn't do the 3 up, 3 down, the trade deadline, preview. We didn't do the 3 up, 3 down. So it's been a minute. So I guess, should we go to it, Steven? 3 up,
Let's do
3
it.
down?
Let's do it. Let's shut this thing down with 3 up, 3 down.
All right. Well, so first up for me, I'm going, up. So I've got Shohei Ohtani, first player ever to have 10 wins on the mound and 40 home runs at the plate in the same season. We've talked about it before. Don't try to compare him to any other players anymore because it's just not going to do it justice. What can you say about Shohei Ohtani that we haven't already? But go for it, Steven.
He's a unicorn. There's not much else to say. He's a unicorn. Um, and he's just somebody that is transcending the game. And I hope one thing that I take away from this stat is that I hope it's not the last time we see 10 wins and 40 homers in the same season, because it is, I hope he inspires a generation of young players that could do the same in baseball, because the two-way stuff is fun.
Yeah, I mean, he could very easily have kind of like the Steph Curry effect on baseball that Steph had in basketball, where all the kids want to just shoot 3-pointers now. Kids are going to grow up probably wanting to say, no, I want to pitch and I want to hit. I want to do both. And so we'll see, good luck trying to be, I saw a thing earlier. He's in the top, I think, 5 of every category for the American League hitting Triple Crown and pitching Triple Crown. So that's also what's crazy to me, is not just that he's like major league quality, he is like all-star quality at both. It's amazing to watch what this guy's doing. I hope that he is in orange and black next year. I'm just going to say, I want them to back up the Brinks truck, give this guy whatever he wants, because he is so fun to watch. So first up, Shohei Ohtani, yet another historical season from him, and we're not even halfway through August yet. That could easily be first ever with 15 wins and 50 home runs in a couple weeks. Number 2, I'm going to go with the Texas Rangers. We talked about kind of what they did at the deadline. They needed some pitching. They went and got 2 of the top pitchers out there with Jordan Montgomery and Max Scherzer. And since the deadline, or at least in the last 10, they're 8-2. They're kind of, solidifying themselves as a playoff team and probably the champion of the AL West.
Yeah, no, their offense is scary. Their offense is scary. And another thing that's scary about them is not only their pitching that they keep on re-upping, they're well managed. They got a guy in there, and so much is said about like the managing in today's game, and I agree to some extent that, maybe it's not as skilled as it once was. You have so many collaborators that are, helping decisions with lineups and pitching changes and everything going on, but nothing could replace experience. And I don't think anything could replace the experience that Bruce Bochy brings to that Texas clubhouse. And they're just a really good team. They're going to make it deep in the postseason. In my mind, I could see them, really out pitching teams, and they're aggressive with acquisitions. And I think they're going to be good for a really long time. So kudos to Texas. It's good to see the Rangers, be good again. And they are a team that has never won a franchise World Series. So something to look out for. Would be cool to see them get it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, looking at the rest of the American League, I could easily see them like at least making the AL Championship Series. I feel like anything less than that, I'd be surprised. So, and like you said, they got a manager that most people listening to this podcast know and love. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to hoist the commissioner's trophy. And so we'll see if he can, I guess it would be the second city that he would win the first World Series for. So we'll see what they can do.
Good point.
Third up, I'm going to go with Major League Baseball fans. It's kind of an awesome time to be a fan. We got, attendance is really high right now. I've seen it, I feel like every weekend, the last couple weekends I've seen, average attendance was like 34,000, the highest in X amount of years. We had a record-breaking offensive night a couple weeks back, where like eight or nine teams scored 10 or more runs. And most importantly, and this also is kind of a contributor to the slow deadline that we saw, but 19 teams are still alive, and I kind of made that up myself. By still alive, I mean within 5 games of a wild card spot. So that's almost 2/3 of baseball feels like they're in it on August 10th. And that's always good to kind of at least feel like you should check the standings in case your team can get hot, because they're at least within striking distance. So, I think it's a good time to be a baseball fan. Also, kind of throw in the Oakland wrinkle. They've been getting love everywhere the A's are playing. The visiting or the home fans have been kind of supportive. I've seen it in Seattle, San Francisco. I think I saw something. I don't know if they're actually in Chicago right now to play the White Sox, but I saw something online earlier with the White Sox making something for them. So great time to be a baseball fan, Steven.
Yes, great year for baseball, and I think it all started with the World Baseball Classic. That was the catalyst for this season. It got everybody going, got the juices flowing. Um, I am really happy with the way the game is right now. Um, and I guess the only thing standing in its way is the NFL season coming up soon. So that would be the only thing standing in baseball's way. But based on how they've done this year with attendance, I've looked at the same numbers that you looked at, and they're doing really well. And it's definitely really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully, the next month and a half or so, or I guess 2.5 months, including the playoffs, kind of just keep going on this trajectory, because it'll be a fun, push down the to the finish line here in baseball. And so, we always like to end on a high note here on the shutdown inning. So now we'll throw it over to Steven for 3 down.
Yeah, so I will save the best for last. The first one, and this is not anybody's fault, but Shane McClanahan's going to be out for the probably the entire season. I don't think he's coming back. He's got a bit of an arm problem, and McClanahan, when he's at his best, he is the game one starter for Tampa Bay, and it does suck to see him go down. Good thing Tampa Bay brought in a reinforcement at the deadline with Aaron Savali. They have Tyler Glass now too, friend of the show. So they're not in bad shape, but it does suck to lose a guy like McClanahan, who hopefully he's okay. Hopefully there's no major structural damage. I believe I saw that he's going to get a second opinion. Anywhere you have forearm injury, you fear the elbow. It's all connected. So we hope McClanahan is good, and he is down number one, because that is quite the downer. Down number two, let's go with MLB replay next. And this is not anything that happened. I mentioned this to Tyler before. It's not anything that happened recently where it's a specific call that prompted me to kind of go off on this, but it's the overall idea on, not enough evidence to overturn. And my belief is that the umpires in New York should get a complete, and this could be difficult because I don't know how you edit out the umpire making the original call, but I think the umpires in New York should not go based on the original call, and they should make a completely separate ruling in the video room. That's my mind. I don't, and again, very hard to edit. You have a close play at first base. The first angle that we get is the umpire literally going safe. Like, you can't edit that out. But if there's any possible way that umpire in that replay room could get a look at a call without knowing what the call was, that would be helpful on these plays. Very helpful on these plays, and I would like to see it. I didn't even get your thoughts on the first first down. So, what do you think about the McClanahan injury and then the replay? Because I kind of went too fast there.
Yeah, I think the McClanahan thing is tough because, like you said, he's the number one. You never want to see those guys go down, especially on the home stretch. It was right after the deadline, so they were able to at least get a reinforcement. I think they had an idea he might be banged up. But yeah, like you said, you just hope it's nothing structural. Hopefully he can bounce back and at least give you a healthy 2024, because, he's a guy you can depend on if he's healthy, and they need him to be healthy. And I think Glasnow's even banged up a little right now, isn't he?
He might be.
I guess, isn't he always? Sorry, friend of the program, I know. But so, hopefully this doesn't impact the Rays' chances in October too much. But yeah, back to the replay thing. I think it is. You don't have to edit out the umpire. Just limit how long you let the umpire watch. The play is not made. Usually the call is not made like right when the ball hits the first baseman's mitt or the runner tags the base. You don't need to see the aftermath. You just need to see what makes the call the call. So like right when the ball hits the first baseman's mitt, pause it there. Don't let them see what their buddy who's on the field called. So I do think their inclination is to, unless it's blatantly obvious, just to say not enough evidence to overturn. So it shouldn't be, it was the call on the field right or wrong. It should be, what should the call on the field have been? And, what was called doesn't matter. It's getting it right. And so we'll see. I mean, I also then at that point, what are you doing? You just have like 4 umpires sitting in a dark room in New York, like reading together or something. Like they're not allowed to watch baseball. But so I think that most of them are watching the games live. And then if they get a replay call, they start watching, that specific play. But we'll see. But I've said it for a while. I have a couple gripes with replay. One of them is, they tend to stick up for their buddies, and the other is kind of the spirit of why replay was brought in. It was to get the missed call, not the, his foot popped up off the bag for a split second and they held the tag. So now we're going to call him out where he beat the play. Those are my two biggest, gripes about it. And I think both of those are pretty simple to fix if they chose to.
Yeah, under my reasoning, they would be locked in a room and they would be reading a book, and then all of a sudden there would be like a red alarm that goes off going replay, 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 and then they put on the headset and then they'd that would be what would happen. Anyhow, number 3, third and final,
like a cartoon caricature of Rob Manfred pops up. Replay, replay, replay.
Yeah, get on the headset now. Yeah, that would be pretty awesome. Third down. This is a really interesting one because it kind of took up a lot of the news cycle in baseball. But the Chicago White Sox have a situation where they are kind of a toxic culture. And Middleton, I believe his name's Keon Middleton, who just got traded to the New York Yankees. He's a reliever. He mentioned after he had gotten traded that there are no rules in Chicago, and that guys could show up late, guys could pretty much do whatever they want. And it is not a great quote to read. You never want to hear anything about an organization, going about their business this way. And I just have to say that, and Lance Lynn went on the Foul Territory podcast and kind of backed up what Middleton was saying. He pretty much said that he was telling the truth and that it's right that there's pretty much no lies with what he was saying. It's disappointing. And I do want to say that if you're a big league franchise and you're dogging it, you're showing up late, like, bring some little kid back in you. Like, that would be my message. Don't treat it like a job. There's so many people that want to play big league baseball. And if you're making it a culture that isn't fun, especially if you're a player, if you're making it a culture that isn't fun, then get a gripe and figure it out. And also I have to blame the people, in the White Sox front office, the top of the food chain. That goes for the owner, Jerry Reinsdorf. That goes for the manager, Pedro Grifol. Like, all of them have to be held accountable. They are in charge of this entire thing. Honestly, I don't know how you come back from something like this and if you're Pedro Grifol, the manager of the White Sox, how do you come back and, lead a team next year, with this reputation that you now have where it's like, oh man, Pedro, you're tied to overseeing a franchise that says that the culture sucks. Like, that sucks to me. And hopefully they could get it figured out because the White Sox fans deserve much better than to hear that their team has some internal bleeding going on. So tough to hear that. And, Middleton, I wouldn't say it's a snitch. I wouldn't say he's a snitch. I would say that he's trying to, help improve a culture that needs help. And I'm sure that he has a lot of friends that are still there, teammates that he cares about, that he genuinely wants to change for. So tough situation there. Did you happen to see that story, Tyler? Because I kind of pretty disappointed by that one.
Yeah, I did. It's kind of surprising to see this dirty laundry coming out about multiple teams after the deadline. But, I'm kind of not surprised to hear about it as far as the White Sox are concerned, just because the talent hasn't really been the issue there for a couple of years, but they haven't really played to their potential. So I always felt like something had to have been up there. And so to hear that it's been kind of a free for all, terrible culture that, kind of, do whatever you want kind of thing. I'm not surprised to hear it in the way that at least that kind of explains the performance on the field to an extent. Like you said, I'm sure Middleton still has quite a few friends in that clubhouse who are, I wouldn't be surprised if you even said like, hey, do you want me to like say something now that like I'm not in the clubhouse?
Yep.
It won't impact me as much. I'll talk about it if you want me to. And I'm sure they were like, hell yeah, man. Like, please help me. You got to help me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, hopefully it does, because like you said, the White Sox are a historic franchise. They've been around a long, long time. And, they're kind of a lot of people kind of look at them as the little sibling in Chicago to the Cubs. And so hopefully they can figure it out and turn things around. But it is surprising to see that, a professional sports franchise would let their clubhouse operate in a fashion that has been, reported.
Yeah, disappointing. And, at the end of the day, they need to clean house. Like, I don't care if Pedro Grifol is a great baseball mind, but if he's not respected, and that seems to be, based on the comments, like, if they're walking all over the guy and they're walking all over the coaching staff and they're kind of doing whatever they want, like, you got to get rid of him. So that's why I'm saying right now, I would be genuinely shocked if he's there opening day in the dugout for next season, because that's unacceptable to have that come out, to have multiple players back it up. And again, maybe it's not Pedro Grifol. Maybe there's not a lot he could do. Maybe it's just a player personnel issue that is not related to him. But you're leading the ship. You have a responsibility as a leader, not just somebody that makes a pitching change here and there, makes a lineup correction here and there. You are also figuratively a leader and the voice in that room, and got to do a better job if guys are walking all over you. So that was disappointing to see. But anyhow, Tyler, I think we shut it down again. This was a pretty good episode.
Yeah, we did. It's we're in the home stretch, and we started it off strong, I think, my man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Second half, first episode post trade deadline. Good. We're looking forward to catching all those pennant races. We're looking forward to doing our bananas content, which is coming up soon. We teased it at the top of the show. We're going to tease it again. Stay tuned for some surprises, hopefully, and some talk about our experience down there at the Savannah Bananas game. Yeah, that's it. Thank you everybody for listening. Shutdown_inning on Twitter. Go follow. Spotify, Stitcher.
On X.
On X. Yeah, sorry. Don't block me for saying that. Thank you, John. And yeah, go check us out there on those platforms. And yeah, I think we shut it down again.
That's what's up.